Hello and welcome back to the channel. We've got some more GAA coverage. Obviously, myself and Connor spent some time earlier discussing the upcoming games this weekend, but there was obviously the last sort of hour, half an hour or so, there's been some breaking news that after we did discuss it earlier, but Mickey Harte has now officially he's left Tyrone after 18 years in the job, and so we thought we would come on and discuss that and pay tribute to the job the man done. What's your first reaction to the news, Connor?
Yeah, shocked, Gerry. It seems to have been fairly set in stone for a while. The reason I see a few journalists tweeting it there, they're all kind of going together the same thing, and it seems to all have interviews for tomorrow's paper. So there was obviously some time embargo that they were told they'd put at 9:30, but I think he told the players last night that he was stepping down. But I suppose, Gerry, it's just what the man has done for Gaelic football. It's just unbelievable. Like we were kind of saying earlier, how it was being compared to Arsene Wenger, but I wouldn't even have that comparison because Wenger came into a club that were the longest serving club in the English Premiership, in Arsenal. He did an unbelievable job, but Hart went to a county that had never won an All-Ireland title. Like Sam Maguire had never crossed the border there at Auchnacloy or over in Castlederg or wherever the Tyrone border is. Tyrone is one of those counties that borders a few different places. It's definitely there with Monaghan and Donegal in particular. But I suppose that Mickey Harte, he took Tyrone to three Sam Maguires, 03 and 05 and 08, and just, if you got any impression of the man, it was just his drive, his determination. Like he was Tyrone football, like there and then. And I suppose like that, just Gerry, it was just an absolutely incredible job. And I think that, as I said earlier, I think this is going to be a case for Tyrone people, and I'll be very, very careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's an interesting point you make. In that it is be careful of what you wish for, because I know he says, I think it might have been, I know we've discussed this topic a couple of times now. But to me, it's one of these situations where, like probably the attitude that people are having, where like it's maybe time to move on. It comes from being a victim of his own success. He came into Tyrone, as we said earlier. He'd never won. Tyrone had never won an All Ireland. He, built a team. There were some obviously elements that were there before. He brought in a lot of young players that he brought through the minors and the under-21s, and he picked up silverware along the way. And like that team, like there was just like whenever he came in 2003 when they won the first All Ireland, like there was just a genuine feeling like this team were a bit special, and like he came in, obviously just a few months after Armagh, the neighbours the noisy neighbours had won theirs, and Joe Kernan, and people thought maybe at the time that Armagh were set to dominate, and without Mickey Harte they may well have done. They certainly that they made the final in 2003, and I don't know if you remember it, but I remember I can't remember who it was now. I just thought, was it Conor Gormley maybe?
Yeah,
made an amazing tackle. Like that's my it just like it's just opened up, and it's like, right, Armagh, this is it. Armagh's back in the game. Goal. I don't know how. Like it was as if he had about the length of an arm that was about 4 arms long, and he got in and made the tackle, and they won. I think, did they win it? I think they won everything nearly that year, didn't they? They won, just they cleaned up. Even I remember the Ulster final. I think it was that first year, and in the Ulster final, and they played Down, I think, and it ended up going to a replay.
Yeah, and they hammered them right.
I think Down looked that day like they had them beat, and Tyrone come back, got over the line, and obviously that final, Tyrone and Armagh. I don't know if there was too many. If that might have been the first final, between two teams from the same province. I'm sure there wasn't many before, because it would have been the early days of the backdoor system. But like from somebody, what age would I have been then? Maybe about 19 or so, 18, 19, and it was massive. It was absolutely massive up here, and I don't live in Tyrone, I don't live in Armagh. I live in Antrim, and I've worked in Belfast most of my life. But you come across people, you know, from Tyrone and Armagh, and they live and breathe it, and it was amazing back then. And obviously, you know, he's went on and done, you know, he won another 2 after that. But like, obviously, you know, winning 2 and winning 3 is great. But for the people of Tyrone, breaking the duck, you know, was the one. You know, it's like they waited, like, what was, like, must be 100 years or something anyway, you know, something like that to get one. And he got them there.
Yeah, and just Gerry, just in case the views are skyrocketing, you're not hearing the thoughts of one of his key players here on the show. But I just think that that's the, like, I can remember the first year I really would have followed the Gaelic football would have been 2005. But obviously I was a very wee boy in 2004, and I can clearly remember Westmeath getting over the line in Leinster. But that was really the only memory of that championship. But from 05 onwards, I would have really paid attention, and I suppose I can just remember that 05 campaign. I wouldn't maybe remember too much, but I can remember the Ulster final. I watched the first day of the Tyrone and Armagh, and I remember, no, I didn't. I missed the first. Actually, the replay was one of the first matches I can really remember watching and really wanting to watch. And I can remember the lads coming on and getting sent off. I think Canavan was done hardy that day, and Armagh won by 2 points. And then I can remember following Tyrone against the Dubs in the quarter final in 05. They destroyed the Dubs. There was Muggsy with the 2 hand passes and the wonder goal. And then I think the best game I've ever watched in my life was that Tyrone and Armagh famous one in 05, where it was the master passing to the student passing to his master, with Muggsy giving the free to Canavan laid on, and Canavan put it over the bar. And I think Canavan had taught Muggsy in school there. That's all Mulligan that is. But then the final then in 05, I can remember watching Tyrone and Kerry and Canavan. It was the tactical masterstroke coming on and off. And I don't want to go back too much from 04 and 05 or 04 and 03 even, because I wouldn't really have watched those games, so I wouldn't really remember too many of them, to be honest with you. But then I can recall being stunned in 06 when Laois knocked Tyrone out with the Ulster Championship. I think the Derry Tyrone had played in Ulster. It was a terrible game. And in 07 then, I can remember being down in my late grandmother's house in Limerick and watching Graham Gurley scoop the ball over the net. And the one thing I can say about Mickey Harte then, Gerry, that year was, I remember, I think it was Joanne Cantwell, someone asked him in the interview after the match, what are your thoughts in the future? He said, oh, I'll be back next year, don't you worry. And I think that got the drive of the man. He was just a single-mindedness. I just have a quote here from the back of his autobiography I have written down here. I think it says, the key to everything is to respect uniqueness. That is the thread that defines my teams and maybe my entire outlook on life. To get the most from life and other people, we must respect every individual. That is the baseline from which we can never go wrong. Now, obviously, that's the Harte now. He's big into uniqueness. He's an incredibly single-minded individual. And to be honest, just going back in that day in 08, then they came and, oh, Gerry, I'm actually going to vomit thinking about it, because Westmeath had them beaten in 08, and there was the 2 red cards. Doran Hart is one of my great friends. He was definitely done that day up in Omagh. I think Tyrone had been beaten by Down in the qualifiers, and Westmeath had a really good team. Damien Healy was also sent off, and Desi Dolan missed a goal chance later on. Westmeath were 2 points down. That could have been the end of that Tyrone team. Tyrone went on to win the All-Ireland then, and I can actually remember that year then watching it. It was an absolute monsoon in Croke Park in 2008 when they bet the Dubs by, I think it was 3-14 to 1-8 or something. It was they really destroyed the Dubs that day, and then they bet Wexford, which was expected. And again, going to the final, I really would have fancied Kerry that day. They had Pat O'Shea, but Tyrone bet them by 4 points. It was obviously the day with Donaghy. His father was a Tyrone man, and his father had done the interview against Donaghy's will that day. It wasn't nice. And then I suppose it didn't really work out for Harte from 09 onwards. Just going to go through the games there in 09. These are the knockout games. I want to go through here. I go to the ones, but they won the Ulster 09. Then they lost to Cork in semi-final. A very good Cork team. And 2010, I think the Dubs bet them in 10 and 11. And 2012, I'm not entirely sure off my own. I think Kerry bet them down in the qualifiers. Kerry actually had only beaten Westmeath briefly a week before, and then Mayo bet them in 13. Armagh was the qualifier in 14. But since that Armagh game, I think that was kind of the turning point of Harte's career, because Kerry bet them then in 15, and Mayo bet them in 2016, and the Dubs bet them in 17, and the All-Ireland final in 18 back in the final, and then Kerry bet them last year, and now Donegal this year. But that's just a brief synopsis of all the 18 seasons there. I think in 2004, Mayo bet them in a quarter final, and that was obviously a very sad one with Cormac McKenna. But I can recall being absolutely shocked. Just reading that book there, Hard Presence is the Only Thing. You can just go through the one with the one thing I really got was his relationship with God, one, but also his absolute darling angel in life seemed to be his daughter, McKenna. I think she seemed to be absolutely everything. And it was just heartbreaking, Gerry, what happened there. And she was just really everything to the man. And I think you could say TINE2 is not enough before 2008. She had stitched everything. They had literally everything planned to win that third one. And I just think that the man has just had so much personal tragedy with those things. And he's just such a positive man, always up and outlook in life. And just say from Mickey Harte perspective, just as a man, there's very few men, Gerry, that you'd have more respect for in GAA community or in the or beyond, to be honest, Gerry,
Yeah. Just obviously you mentioned about his daughter, and like I read one of the books, that come out sort of around the time, and he did there was so much, talking about her, and she was close to the team, and it was, it's the Tyrone team sort of, it always felt like they did have that genuine, it's us against everybody, it's like we are, very much locked down, and we are a group, we are a family, and certainly what happened to McKenna, how he even went on and lived a very public life. I would imagine probably 99% of people, whenever something like that happened, would have just wanted just to drift away and be left to their own devices, and not have to go through what he did. So it's a testament to the character of the man, and it probably was something that managing Tyrone was probably a part of how he was able to get through that as well. It gave him a purpose as such from that, and obviously it was just such a tragedy. And I think as well around that same time, two of his brothers passed away as well. So he did and he seemed to a very hard time. And then obviously there was the tragedy, Cormac McAnallen as well, a part of the Tyrone team. He really more so than just being a football manager, he had a lot of stuff to deal with, that was, life stuff, and I suppose that is testament to the GAA as well, that it's, it is real people and real lives, and it's not, people living in the clouds on their £200,000 a week, so what do you think, what do you think he'll do next? Do you think he'll go to another county? I don't think he'll go and manage another county, but I could see him doing a lot of after dinner work, and I think he's a character that there's probably not anybody involved in the GAA that if they had the opportunity to listen to Mickey Harte and get inside Mickey Harte's head and hear the things that he has to say, that would pass that opportunity up, so I think there's a big opportunity for him in that kind of thing. Do you think he'll stay in football, or do you think it is kind of that kind of a role he'll go for?
Well, someone asked me, I was saying something earlier on that I don't know, he seems to have dedicated his whole life to Tyrone football and bettering them. And someone said to me that he mightn't have met Nelson in his life like the GA said. It could be a bit like myself. And to be honest, Gerry, they mightn't be too far wrong there either. I kind of understand Harte's obsession and passion with these things, that kind of way. He has an absolute he's just such a single-minded person, so driven, so determined to succeed in everything that he does, that kind of way. And I think this will be an absolute huge void in his life gone without the games. I just don't think that. I'd say he'll find it hard now. He's an incredibly religious man, and I think his faith has helped him through those personal tragedies. But I'd say now that he'll notice it'll be a big, huge change. Like I'd say, without having the Tyrone football to look after.
Yeah, he's I think we says already. I think he's 67. So it's a good age to be having the responsibility and what he was doing. So it probably isn't the case of he genuinely if it was time for him to retire and just but I do think as we said earlier, I think he does live and breathe football, and I think that he probably will want to keep himself active and keep himself busy in some way within the game. Obviously I've already been looking, who's the potential replacements. Obviously there's a few of his old players have been in management, but Canavan's been in management, and Ryan McMenamin, I think, it was managing for Mana. So a few of them have been involved. But have you seen anything or heard anything about who Tyrone might turn to?
Yeah, I think Gerry, we can finally actually probably discuss who Tyrone will turn to without maybe dismissing Mickey Harte, but there's one man I think that is an absolute no-brainer, and I think it's Malachy O'Rourke, Gerry. I think that he's an absolute shoo-in for this job. I think that Malachy O'Rourke, I don't know now, will Tyrone appoint someone, maybe they might see him as an outsider. He's a Fermanagh man originally, but I think he lives in Ballygawley, and he would be a brilliant man in Tyrone. He wouldn't even have any club politics or anything like that to come in. He did an absolutely outstanding job in Monaghan. He did an absolutely outstanding job in Fermanagh. He did an absolutely outstanding job in a few club teams. I think it was the Loop in Derry he was coaching. I think he was coaching Cav and Gales as well, and he's coached a few different teams, has Malachy O'Rourke. But I think that he's the man if he's available. Now, he's agreed, I think, to manage Wally Graham's Glen in Mahara there, Gerry, in this year. So whether that'll stop him taking the Tyrone job, whether he wants it, I'm not even sure. If O'Rourke is interested in the job, to be honest with you, but I think that definitely he's the man. Fergal Logan, I think he was manager when Tyrone won an Ulster under 21 title or not under 21 title in 2015. So I think he could be the man as well in Tyrone. He's probably the best option. Personally, maybe a bit of it unpopular. I don't know how any of the former players maybe done enough in management to justify getting that job. Gerry, getting the Tyrone senior football job, to be honest with you. I just don't know. I don't know, like, have any of them the CV. Well, none of them would have the CV of Malachy O'Rourke. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and I don't know is it going to go through, but I think Jim McGuinness could be someone who Tyrone could look at for that job. Again, nearby in Donegal did a very good job, like, and why would he think he could be the man for Tyrone? Another man maybe who is probably a bit ambitious, but not ambitious, but it's probably a bit Mickey Moore, I was going to say, he could be one man. Like, he's done very, very well across a wide range of teams. He got Mayo to the Ireland final in 2006, and I think he's done a good job when he was in Derry, and he's done a great job with a few club teams, Loughneel and Kilcoo and some of those teams. So Mickey Moore could be a man that Tyrone could look at. No, but look, they probably, I'd say, Gerry, if Tyrone don't appoint someone internal, it'll be Malachy O'Rourke. But I'd say other than that, it'll be someone internal. And from what I'm hearing, Fergal Logan is the strong candidate at the moment.
That Fergal Logan was the name that I seen. It was one of the articles I was looking at. Just as the news was breaking, they had like a wee bit attached, and I'm not even sure where the odds came from, but it was like a sort of like a bookie's odds, and they had Fergal Logan as a favourite. I think it was something like 4-6, which would kind of suggest that he seems to have a very good chance, obviously getting the job. He was a member of the Tyrone team that were in the 1995 final. I think that was the one they lost to the Dubs.
Yeah, 95, and they were, to be honest with you, Gerry, that game against Dublin in 95. I don't know. Did Canavan pick the ball up in the ground late on? It could have easily been a replay. Like, I don't know. I think that could have been the first time Tyrone won Sam, but I suppose it wasn't to be, and it took them to 2003. And I suppose Mickey's record in All-Ireland finals, the 3 games, I suppose, we just focus on 03, 05 and 08. They really got their matchups right and their game plans right on those occasions. I think since 2008, I'd say Tyrone have struggled, Gerry, to be honest with you. I just don't think that they haven't been anywhere near what they were before that. And I think that they won their 2 Ulsters in 2009 and 2010, but it took them until 2016 to win another Ulster title, and 17. So probably haven't been as good for Harte since 2008, to be honest with you now. But like, they would have been hot favourites to beat Cork in 2009 in that semi-final, and Cork got the better than that day. But I think another thing that probably pays tribute to Harte is that in 2012, they played Kerry down in the qualifiers in round 3. I think it was round 3 in the qualifiers. Or was it round 2? But whatever round it was, round 2 or round 3. I think round 3. But they played Kerry, and I think it was in, again, we're very doubtful here with the facts, but I think it was in Killarney. But it was definitely in Kerry anyway. But Kerry won by 10 points. It was 116 to 16. But the Mickey Harte leaving that ground, the Tyrone team got an unbelievable ovation. The whole Kerry crowd clapped the Tyrone team down the town, and I think that just shows you the respect that Kerry lads had for Tyrone. And obviously Kerry would consider themselves the home of Gaelic football, 37 All-Ireland titles, although it hasn't been a recent success for them. But like the fact that they had just so much, I think there was obviously the whole thing with they were respecting the tragedies and everything that happened to the man as well. But I just think that was just one thing that really stood out, was how much respect that Kerry football had for Mickey Harte and for his Tyrone teams.
I think it's quite interesting because there does seem to be like there was a couple of things that I read on Twitter like over the last couple of weeks, and it was around actually the time whenever Mayo and Tyrone were playing in the league game where Mayo needed to beat Tyrone to stay up and Tyrone needed to win to stay, and I will tell you it wasn't fair. It was a different forum that I'm on, and it was a conversation between somebody that was from down Mayo and a couple of boys from up around Ulster, like our man and maybe a couple of Derry boys and stuff. And the Mayo guy was like questioning why everyone in Ulster doesn't love Tyrone. But I think it is one of them things where like certainly success for a start. Success, if you're seeing somebody else winning all the time, that makes you not like them. And that's again in many ways it's a credit. It's a credit to Mickey Harte and Tyrone. But it was an interesting conversation because the Mayo guy was like so full of respect and like Tyrone, they've always been brilliant. Their fans have always been brilliant, and all the Armagh and the Derry ones and Down ones were all like, oh no, you couldn't But it's something that it's a wee bit like if you go to like football and somebody like Alex Ferguson, where he'll do anything to win and he'll say anything to win. Sometimes Mickey Harte said things, and whether he meant it, whether he believed it, but you knew that sometimes he was dropping something in that might win a wee mind game. And it's another fella in his cap. He wasn't beyond doing that. To try and get Tyrone over the line in certain games. And it's one of those things where certainly people up here were like, Tyrone, they were, but again, they were winning everything, and that's why if you win, people don't like you. People at the minute want the Dubs to lose because they've won 5, they've won possibly going for 6. It's success that does that, and it's probably one of the biggest compliments you can pay to the man. That like he was, and his Tyrone team were so unpopular up in Ulster because they were so good.
Well, Gerry, all I can say on that point is that now I you'd hear stories about what's being said on the pitch, and I suppose some of the antics might be the most pleasing on the eye, to say the least. But I've dealt just mostly with work with a few of those Tyrone players in personal conversations, and I have to say now, and this has nothing to do with Mickey Harte, I suppose, but they've all been very, very courteous and very nice people, and they've never. One thing I will say about them, and it's in contrast to other counties, I've never had an issue even getting interviews. They've never been awkward or anything like that, and they haven't been the type either that have been robotic or monotonous in answers either. Like, so I think that's one thing I have to say in terms of Tyrone players, that they have a bad reputation, maybe so, but I've dealt with some of them, and I have to say I haven't found any resemblance to that whatsoever, to be honest, Gerry. So I think that's one thing probably as well, is that the players don't seem like they seem to have the most unbelievable level of respect for Mickey Harte as well. And I just think that listening to him a few times, I suppose this year after the Donegal match, he was asked about his future, and I think the answer was no, I haven't thought about that yet. But another year, as I mentioned down in 07 against me, when I saw was watching on telly, it was very much I'll be back next year, and there was always that we'll go again next year. And I think the fact that there was a doubt, kind of the term was up, he hadn't decided yet. Like then, I suppose the rumours came that he had asked for another term, wasn't given it, and then I suppose the fact he wasn't given the term, he prompted the decision to resign. Now, has he been sacked, Gerry, is the question. I suppose if he asked for a term and he didn't get a term, has he been sacked?
Well, I imagine we'll probably find out more. I know some of the journalists, I know Brendan Crossan from the Irish News, there's a big thing. Apparently he's at an open, or was it a very honest or something interview with Mickey Harte or something like that. And I've seen that, so obviously we'll find out probably more in the coming days. But from just reading and looking at what people are saying, it sounds to me like Tyrone have basically rejected the opportunity. He wanted the one extra year. Tyrone have turned that down, and it looks to me like he's then said, right, well then I'm going to step down, and probably as we say, it looked like it was going down the line of the clubs, and as we said earlier, I don't think he deserved that. That they have to sit and like have somebody come in and say whatever they think is happening with Tyrone or where Tyrone needs to go. And the guy that's done the job for 18 years and done a better job than anybody in the history of Tyrone has done, has to sit there and prove himself again.
Well,
but
Gerry, if he asked for another year and he didn't get another year, has he really left on his own terms?
Well, no, it's probably not. No, but again, obviously, like I don't think anybody in Toronto says, look, no, it's not happening. But we're going to listen to see, what it's a strange thing where like it wouldn't really happen in any other walk of life, or like it wouldn't happen in any other sport. But it seems like, as you said earlier, they were intending and making him interview kind of for his own job, and I suppose in some ways it's not on his own terms, but technically he hasn't been sacked. It's a strange situation.
I think that I think just from reading very brief quotes, I think he's not complaining in a way so far about the whole process of getting rid of him. So probably credit to him that he's not complaining, especially if he hasn't been maybe given the opportunity to decide his own future. But I suppose the man is resigned. Like, I think though that obviously the most obvious GA comparison would be Sean Boylan and Gerry, where you got that. But I think it's a different situation because I think that this Tyrone team looks quite young and looks like huge potential. But I think Boylan, when he was at Meath towards the end, they looked like they were going to have a bit of a slide anyway. So I think that, and just obviously Pete McGrath then with Down, he kind of left as well after a long number of years. Those will be the most two recent ones. And I think Jim Gavin last year, but Jim Gavin was obviously a very different scenario because they have won 5 All-Ireland and 6 in a row. But I suppose the only real man, Gerry, now left in the GAA who have been there for ages and still there is Brian Cody, is the only man who's really been long-term. I don't think so. I'm just going through the other account. I know Gaelic football, no. I don't think there's been anyone in hurling there too long in recent years. Longevity as a manager is not it's not the done thing anymore. And I think that's why people were so fascinated with Mickey Harte and his longevity, that he has done 18 years, 2002 to 2000. And when we say he's done 18 years, Gerry, he's done 18 years of dedicated, like it's every day. It was a full-time commitment and it was done properly. It was never done half-hearted or anything like that. And I'm just even thinking back to the club scene, obviously just thinking in Westmeath for that. I don't think there's been a manager in Westmeath who's been there for 18 years, to be honest with you, either. Like, so I think Brian Cody really and truly is unique in the GAA sense, and I suppose the one Gaelic football manager, other one in recent, well, it's not too recent, a long time ago now that we can probably compare him to, is Mick O'Dwyer, because he stayed in Kerry an awful long time. But the difference was Micko did an awful lot of years in Kerry, but Micko probably did more years when he left Kerry with other teams, going to Kildare and to Laois and to Wicklow and Clare. So I just think that who else can we compare? I just don't like, if you just go to all the other Ulster counties, how many different managers would he have faced in the Ulster Championship alone and the All Ireland Championship? Like, I'd say it must be 3 figures, like, nearly.
That's bound to be close, like, and you think as well, like, obviously, we talk, like, he's been in the job for 18 years, but like he probably done, maybe how many years before with Tyrone and building the team that he finally took over then. Do you know what I mean? So like it's obviously 18 years with the senior team, but he had years with the under-21s, he had years with the minors, and it's a career. Like, like some people, like most people don't even stay in the same job that length of time, and they're not under the pressure of you lose matches and you could get sacked. It really is a testament to the man that he stayed there so long, and while obviously like if somebody comes in 10, 20 years time and doesn't really know much about what he was about, they'll look at it and say, yeah, he won this in the first half of his tenure, and then there wasn't a lot of trophies in the second half. But at the same time, whenever you dug a wee bit deeper into it there, and it was the Dubs, it was Mayo, it was Donegal, it was Kerry. He wasn't losing there was a couple of bad ones along the way, but generally it was one of the best teams. Even like he says, the one in 2009, whenever he went in and they lost to Cork in the semi-final. Like, was it 12 months later, and Cork were the All-Ireland champions? So they weren't a bad team. He's always had Tyrone at a very high standard, and he generally took them as far as until they met a team that were just genuinely better than them.
And I think Gerry, that's probably part of the problem is for him is his own probably that he maybe is that since 2008 they haven't really beaten a top team in a knockout championship game. I suppose they bet Donegal and Ballybofey probably the close 2 years ago, and then they bet Monaghan. But with no disrespect, a lot of people wouldn't probably put Monaghan in the same bracket as Kerry and Mayo and Dublin. Now that's not being disrespectful at all, but I just don't know. They haven't beaten Kerry, Mayo, or Dublin in the championship since 2000 and 2008 when they bet Kerry in the All-Ireland final. So I think that's probably where people might have been frustrated in Tyrone. But the downside that they're beating everybody else. Do you know that kind of way? They're the most. They were definitely the most consistent team for beating the counties that they'd expect to be beaten. But I think that's probably where just about shortcoming it's just say they just could not get that massive scalp. As I mentioned, I went through every year earlier on. I think Armagh bet them in 2014, but since then it's been Kerry, Mayo, Dublin, and Kerry who've beaten them and Donegal this year as well. And Donegal are a good team, but I don't know, Gerry. It's a tricky one to call. Look, hindsight will tell whether or not this is a good move or not for Tyrone. I'd say personally, I think my own namesake and Cathal McShane in a very good footballers up front. I think Tyrone definitely have players good enough to beat a top team and potentially win All Ireland, but maybe Mickey was the man to do it, maybe he wasn't. But I think we're going to see two things here, Gerry. I think there's going to be a big change in Tyrone. They're either going to push on and win an All Ireland, or they're going to drift off a bit smaller. I don't think they're going to probably stay at this level, to be honest with you.
No, it's probably a fair assessment. So just before we wrap it up, I'll put a question to you and ask you if somebody says that there was one moment from Mickey Harte's time in charge of Tyrone that sticks out in your memory, what would it be?
This is a bit now unfair, I'd say, but I was going to say that 2003 semi-final against Kerry and Pat Spillane at half-time, he gave the famous words, puke football at half-time, and I think that was probably the most standout moment, and I think it's actually a compliment to that Tyrone team. It kind of showed we're going to do things differently. We're going to be, I just read the quote there earlier about his uniqueness. It was one of this where we're not going to go with the status quo here. We're going to do things our own way, and I think that win changed Tyrone football, Gerry, to be honest with you, that kind of way. And then that was the All-Ireland final. I'd say now, but if I was going to ask him for my own person, I wasn't really around in 03, so I think that's probably slightly unfair. Jesus. I don't know, it's a hard one. Just time to think about it. There's been no real one game where you can really say that. I suppose that was probably the one game, Gerry, in 03 against Kerry, where you could have said that was the game. But just, is there any other game that really stands out for Mickey Harte moment? I suppose the 05 and 08 All-Ireland finals were both similar, really, that kind of way. There's no, I suppose just the whole pride, and it's a pity. I often feel, I think the one thing I felt sorry for Harte in some ways that I would have loved him to see him win at Fort Sam after what had gone through in Square Derry with his daughter. And I think that's an awful pity. But the one moment, I suppose the game that probably does stand out would be that Kerry game where they bet. It was the first time, and then obviously there was the 03 final. But no, it's hard. I'd say that game in 03 against Kerry, they bet Kerry, and I think Paddy O'Shea the week after called Kerry fans the worst bunch of effing animals, and then a week later Paddy was he was gone from Kerry, but he was up in the road in Westmeath at the time, that kind of, so like Paddy O'Shea would be, but that was Paddy's last game in Kerry. I think that was, I won't say it was a game that changed modern football, but it was kind of like that. And then that puke football, Johnny, it's haunted Spillane since, but I don't think that was and I don't think that was fair either to call something. I think it just, the reason I'm saying that day, Gerry, is because it was a positive. It changed football that day. You know, that kind of way. It showed it was the first kind of team to really. I suppose maybe Armagh had done beforehand, but it mightn't have been as extreme as Tyrone brought. But it showed they were prepared to do things differently. There was new boys in town, and then obviously that they got the win against them, against Kerry, and then they won the All Ireland. But just before we wrap it up, I'm one of those people. I was at the Tyrone county final this year, the penalty shootout. I'd be following GAA and an awful lot of counties. I don't think there's as passionate, from now my experiences of both in Ireland and abroad. I haven't met a county where everyone you meet from Tyrone absolutely follows and adores the football team, Gerry, you know. And I just think that is an absolute credit to Harte, that for those people who religiously follow the team, that he was able to bring them 3 All-Irelands. Like, I just think that can never be taken away from by anyone. The fact that 3 All-Irelands were brought, it's like going back to Paddy O'Shea brought the Delaney Cup back to Westmeath. It was never going to be taken away. To bring 3 All-Irelands to Tyrone was a serious achievement. And I just, one more thing, a lot of his players would have had issues maybe with certain things, and he was always there. He was always a loyal lieutenant for those players who were going through personal pain. And just one man we have to mention is Cormac McAnallen, the poor fella. Like, he was a star and a full back on the Tyrone team that won the All Ireland. He passed away. Harte went on, won the All Ireland in 2005. It was in honour of McAnallen. Paul McGurr died, I think it was 1995, when Tyrone, I think they won a minor. Did they win the All Ireland minor that year? They were very close, but they might have won it the next year. But there was a young fella from the Downs out just the road from me, Darren Price, who died, a Westmeath minor footballer, and he died in a car accident very young. But I'm just going through some Westmeath players there on Twitter. John Kennan said Mickey Harte went down and spoke to those players about losing a teammate and the grief it caused. So he does unbelievable stuff like that as well. And I just think that very, very few men, Gerry, have done more for Gaelic football, both in Tyrone and nationally. And look, just to wrap it up, Mickey Harte just thanks personally for the memories he's given Gaelic football fans in general, and he's definitely a loss to the game.
Certainly echo those sentiments, and definitely, you know, fantastic man and manager, and you know what he done for Tyrone, fantastic, you know. And I'm sure, I imagine there'll be plenty more said on the subject, plenty more speculation. Myself and Conor obviously will be back next week after the matches, and I'm sure there's only 5 football matches this weekend, so I'm sure we'll probably have a bit more to say on Mickey, you know, before that's done. But thanks to everybody who's watched there this evening, and my thanks to Conor. You know, this late hour, he's already given me enough of his time today, you know, to talk through the games, and he's come on here this evening to talk about Mickey Harte leaving Tyrone. So thanks to Conor, and we'll be back on Monday most likely, and we'll get more then. So thanks for watching.